Our gospel lesson this morning comes from Luke, the 10th chapter, verses 25 through 37. It is the story of the Good Samaritan. And I know as we reflect upon the events of this past week, we certainly are in need of a story about good neighbors and those who reach out to help. I invite you to hear the word that God has for you today as we hear this reading. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you shall live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road. When he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him. And when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. And then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you for whatever more you spend." Jesus turned to the lawyer and said, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" And he said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Let's pray. Wonderful, loving God, the story that Jesus told us is precious. Let it be instructive to us this day as we learn who our neighbor is and how we might reach to them as they lay hurt by the side of the road. Lord, may the words that you have given me today glorify your name. In Jesus' name, amen. This week has been a week of ups and downs. Tuesday night, we fed people at Fred Camp. Almost 80 people. Lots of good food. They laughed, they smiled, they said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And Friday, and many of us served Fred Camp lunch to the Ken Lowe son. Jason and I did that on Friday. And it was a blessing, and it was spiritually moving, and it was a joyful experience to be able to reach out and help another. Yesterday we went fishing at Nye River with the trustees and the youth. Had a great time just being together, rejoicing in the fellowship, feeling the joy of the Lord. It was beautiful. But then we have this week around us where we hear the news around us in the paper, on the TV, on our devices, about people killing one another. And that joy just kind of goes, And we just wonder what we can do to help our world. Jesus tells this beautiful story. And sometimes the story is a better way to explain something than giving a definition. Jesus could have answered them just like that. A lawyer, who's not really a lawyer, he is a scholar of the Hebrew word, the Hebrew Bible. So he knew this just as well as Jesus did. And Jesus knew that just repeating the words back to him wasn't going to be enough. And so Jesus shared the story of the Good Samaritan. And the thought came to me this week that sometimes when someone asks us, what is a Christian? That this story might be the perfect answer. Instead of giving them a description like Christians are those who follow Christ, we can say, well, let me tell you the story that Jesus shared. Share the story of the Good Samaritan. We all know it. We've heard it since we were little. And it's a deep part of who we are because of how often we have heard it. But if we were to tell this story to someone asking us what is a Christian, they would know what the essence of our Christian life, journey, and worship is. Loving God and loving Him and loving ourselves. And after this week, when another African American died at the hands of police, and where 5 police officers lost their lives in Dallas because of hate, a story of who is our neighbor and how we love our neighbor certainly needs to be told. A church, a household of faith, is simply a place where Christians gather to learn more about loving God and loving neighbor and loving ourselves. And Zion, a community of faith on the way to Travelers Rest, has certainly been a place where people learn to love their God, love their neighbors, and love ourselves. The story of the Good Samaritan is the story of love and healing. Healing of body, but also of healing between people who were enemies. For a moment, I want you to imagine, put in your mind the name of one of your enemies. We all have them. Maybe not currently, but past. Maybe it's the schoolyard bully of yesteryear, or the obnoxious neighbor of today, or an ingrained hatred or dislike we were taught from our youth. And instead of entitling the story of the Good Samaritan, you rename it by inserting your enemy into the title instead of Samaritan. This is the story of the good. The Southern soldiers of Spotsylvania might have said, the story of the good Yankee. What would yours be? Because a good story doesn't mean it has to be said exactly the same way that it is. You can replace elements of it and it will sound the same to you. And it will have the same meaning. And we may have lost the understanding of what a Samaritan is to a Jew. But we can still kind of grasp what a Yankee would be to a Southerner, or a Southerner to a Yankee. That will help you to understand the impact of the story on its hearers. You see, in Jesus' day, a Jew would have said the only good Samaritan is a dead one. Jews hated Samaritans because of their impure thoughts on religion. Hear that as they don't believe like we do. And their intermarriage with people of other faiths. Hear that as racial hatred. Jews thought Samaritans were as bad as the Romans. And the feeling was mutual, as every Samaritan would have told the one who helped today that for all the times Jews had ignored him, spit on him, walked on the other side of the road not to be tainted by his shadow, he would have been perfectly justified in ignoring this poor beat-up Jewish guy by the side of the road. But he could not walk by because the Samaritan didn't see a Jewish person. The Samaritan saw a human being. He saw a human being wounded and broken. And he had the means and knowledge to reach out and do what he could to bind up the wounds and offer healing. And yet here a Samaritan reaches out to provide aid and comfort to a Jew who was attacked by the side of the road. It's an unbelievable story, and the poor lawyer who asked for a definition of neighbor could not even say the word Samaritan. He answered Jesus by saying, the neighbor in the story is the one who showed him mercy. Mercy here could go by many other names: compassion, kindness, whatever we call it. It is clear that mercy is about doing. Mercy is an action. Listen to the actions of the Good Samaritan. He came near. He was moved with compassion. He went to him. He bandaged his wounds. He poured oil, a soothing agent, and wine, antiseptic on the wounds. He put him on his animal. He brought him to an inn. He took care of him at the inn. He let him heal when others were taking care of him. And he promised to return and pay extra if that was needed. He wasn't going to keep fixing everything for the man. Instead, he made it possible for the innkeeper and the community around him then to help bring him back to his feet again. For a time during the Civil War, just a few days, Zion United Methodist Church, our building was an inn, a hospital on the way to a traveler's rest, where wounded soldiers came to be healed of body. And for years after those few days, the people here had to help their neighbors recover from the horrors of war that were waged right here on our very ground and in our neighborhood. As a community of faith, we are to continue to be a place of healing and respite for weary bodies and weary souls, a place where people find mercy, compassion, and justice. It's about doing, it's about acting, it's about showing mercy, showing compassion. It's not passive. It's not done from the sidelines. And some things haven't changed. Today, it's a dangerous business to stop by the side of the road to offer assistance. The priest and the Levi might very well have passed by for fear of this Samaritan being a decoy for an ambush, for the Jew being a decoy for an ambush. Jesus sent them out 2 by 2 as a means of protection and balance. Today, we can go by and call 911 from our cell phones. So even if we perceive it to be a more dangerous world, there are still ways to get around the danger and find ways to help healing when we're not out in numbers and safety. Ultimately, what the story is about is loving God. Because if you love your neighbor, if you reach out to offer them love and food and drink and healing, and if you interrupt your journey to tend them, then you are offering that to God. Richard and I have been talking about our ministries here at Zion. And we noted how great we are at feeding physical bodies with our food pantry, and Micah breakfast, and this week Fred Camp. We have multiple ministries and connections and outreach, be it the Thurman Brisbane Center, or Barnabas, or UMCOR, that help us reach out to those who are physically hurting and in need of help. But we also began to talk about other kinds of hands-on ministries. Ministries that would expand the healing that this place is known for, and the teaching that Jesus is known for. Things we could do here. So we asked ourselves questions like, who's being beaten up on dangerous roads near us and left to die? Who is being chewed up and spit out by the culture or individuals or groups of institutions where we are here? In what ways are people in our worshiping community owning that we are neighbors to these people? In what concrete, physical, hands-on ways are we doing mercy with them? And then we ask ourselves, well, what are the skill sets that we have inside? What are our gifts? What are our graces? And we reflected that we have a group of retired teachers. We have numerous retired teachers here at Zion. We have another group of people who have survived cancer. Numerous, too numerous, unfortunately. It's great that they survived it, but cancer is too much. The cancer is too much. We have a bunch of military government types. These are some of our resources within our community. how might we use those gifts to reach out to people by the side of the road? Mr. Rogers of Childhood Television Famous once said, it's not so much what we have in this life that matters, it's what we do with what we have. The alphabet is fine, but it's what we do with it that matters most. Making words like friend, making words like love, that's what really matters. Is there a ministry of helping folks by the side of the road that might fit with the resources we have? Now, this is a very large question, and we don't want to jump into it lightly. And that's where the Colossians passage comes in. Paul is again teaching the people of Colossae. He's reaching out to them with this letter, helping to guide them in their newfound Christian faith, helping them to grow in knowledge of God. And one of the ways he's doing that is by praying for them. Prayers of thanksgiving are being offered by Paul for these marvelous new Christians and for this new church. He prays for them. Prayer puts us in touch with God and the source of all life. Prayer changes things. Ancient monks thought a life of prayer manifested itself in a relationship with others. A life of prayer manifests itself in a relationship with others. Prayer as a dialogue and union with God can hold the world together. That's all we need, isn't it? To hold the world together because it feels like it's falling apart. Prayer shines light on a situation, and in driving back the darkness helps us to see the way ahead. Prayer brings fruits to our ministries and to our gifts. Prayer means we are empowered not by ourselves, not by our knowledge, but by God. So first, we're asking all of us to pray. Pray for God to guide us as God did the Colossians congregation, as God did the Good Samaritan, as God did the Civil War doctors who worked here in this very building attempting to bring healing to wounded soldiers. We need to pray for God to show us how we can continue to be a healing community of faith. Maybe not wounded bodies, maybe wounded soldiers, but definitely those wounded by the world, by its busyness, by its hatred, by its negativity and its hurtfulness, by its selfishness, desire for money, power, and money, for the hurt, for the killing. Prayer is an exercise of the heart that involves action. All of life, healing, offering assistance to those kicked to the curb of life. We are determined what Good Samaritan ministry can blossom from Zion. We must begin here with prayer. Karl Marx said, to clasp the hands in prayer is the beginning of an uprising against the disorder of the world. Let us be in prayer to heal the disorder of the world. So for your homework today, you should have received a little prayer card. It has a lovely picture of the beach because we're all in summer mode and we're thinking of vacations, aren't we? And this is praying for my neighbor in the summer of 2016. So inside is a little quote from Psalm 51 that when I made this back on Thursday, I thought, oh, this is a good way for us to start with prayer. This will give us a good basis, and then we can jump into prayer. Now I wish I would have put the Colossians passage 9 through 12, verses 9 through 12 on there, but maybe you can write it on the back. And I want you to list those people for whom you wish to pray. It may be a Samaritan, it may be an enemy. It may be a neighbor whom you want to invite to church. It may, somewhere on there, I want you to list praying for the new ministries in Zion. What would that look like? What would our Good Samaritan ministry look like if we were to help pick up people by the side of the road? Now that may not literally, we may create a truck and go pick up people by the side of the road and fix their tires or whatever, I don't know. Well, I don't know what God will lead us. But I suspect it has more to do with healing and the foundation of this church. And then maybe it's the human trafficking. We just had conversations with that. We've had conversations about PTSD. We've had many conversations in the first year that I've been here about things that are near and dear to us. And so that's your prayer card. Write those people down there you're praying before. If you don't know what to pray for them, Colossians 1, 9 through 12 works really good. Put their name in that, and that'll work. And keep this by your side. Keep it in your Bible, use it when you're doing your prayer time. And then come September, right, you can open it up, it's great, there's this full blank page. And when God gives you an idea, just write it down in the middle, and then fold the card back up, and you can have it like this. And then it comes September, we'll gather those ideas together. And we'll begin to pray as a body. We'll continue the prayer of discernment as a body of Christ. And to say, okay, God, here we are. We wish to be of service to you, like the Good Samaritan was in this story. And we'll gather those thoughts together. But for now, continue in prayer. Now, this Good Samaritan story, you're going to hear it for the next 4 weeks. So it will become very familiar to us. But each one of the balancing scriptures, actually for last week and for the next 2 weeks, we're going to pair with the story of the Good Samaritan so that we can continue to look and see a little deeper what is it to be a neighbor, what is it to love ourselves, what is it to love God. And so this will become a very familiar story to us. Continue to read it. The more we read it, the deeper we'll go. And that will be a wonderful thing as we're studying scripture. The deeper we go, there's always good. So that's our homework, your little prayer time. Keep that near you, and then in September sometime we'll call it all back, and we'll gather all that things together.